So the question we're asking ourselves today is, what will the shape of the church be going forward? And we've asked a few of our friends this question also, and they've sent in their videos. It's got to be said, we can't include everything that they've said, but we will give you links to the videos so you can watch what they've said in their entirety. But I suppose the first question is, what are we looking forward to?
To me, I've really been missing my church family coming together. It didn't matter about the building, it was the people that made church for me.
I think it's getting back together with the people. We've talked about how the reason we're doing church the way we're doing it at the moment is because what's important for us is the fact that when we have communion, we have it with other people.
The next question I've got, obviously the church serves the parish, and as society changes, the church changes. And so I was wondering what changes there are likely to be in society.
Ooh, that's a difficult one, isn't it? I think the first one is we're going to be in this for a long time. Most things I've read suggest it's going to be at least a year until we get a vaccine, and until that point, we're in danger of it flaring up again. And so, if you look at what's happening at present, we're starting to see three tiers of people in terms of what they're allowed to do. There are those who are shielding, those who are vulnerable, and those who can get out there and do lots of things. And I think we're going to be in that situation potentially for quite a long time.
Another concern is poverty. Obviously, there's been a lot of economic difficulty. And I think Stella's got something to say about that.
One of the things I think many of us have reflected on is how very important frontline workers are. And here we're talking about the nurses and the doctors and what an amazing institution the NHS is. But we are also talking about the auxiliaries in the hospitals, the people, the porters, the people who are keeping the place clean, keeping it running. We're talking about carers. We're talking about supermarket staff. We're talking about the delivery people who really haven't been taken a lot of account of in the past. People who are often on very low incomes and who are in insecure jobs. And I wonder whether the church should be there. Well, I am sure the church should be there leading the way to encourage us to think about justice and equality. So I'm hoping that will be some of the things we'll reflect on when we return to church.
Other people are saying that there's a resurgence of the importance of the local. So people are appreciating their neighbours more, and perhaps the parish church will become more of a focus, not less, after the lockdown, because of its sense of being in the community. There's also been an outpouring of kindness, and I think Pamela's got something to say about that.
There are many things I have noticed, and within our church community, we have had groups who have been working to create scrubs for the staff in our hospitals. We have had people who have been offering to help others with shopping. People who have looked for ways to keep in touch with other people. There have been so many acts of kindness.
There's also been a survey saying that there's huge interest in spirituality and prayer. People have been Googling prayer a lot more, and 25% of the population have accessed online services. And this, it's almost like as the lockdown came, there was this kind of resurgence of spirituality. And that must impact on us as a church. How do we respond to that? I think the final thing that we've acknowledged is different in society is people have got online a lot more. So people are doing their shopping online a lot more. And this isn't going to go backwards. And obviously we've been facilitating, helping people get access to the online services and so on. And so going forward, our world is perhaps going to be a much more online world. Another question I've got then is, in view of what we're looking forward to and in view of how society has changed or will be changed, what changes are we likely to see in church?
I think the big one is going to be that we hear people talking about going back to normal. We will not be going back to normal for a long time. There will be people who, for different reasons, won't be in church on a Sunday when we first go back.
Even when we do return to church, we may have to continue to social distance. We may not be able to use our books because it will be impossible to clean them afterwards. Was reading the words on the screen so awful? If we had screens in all our churches, there would be no problem if we could not use our books.
Now, we've been doing online services and quite a few people have commented on those. So let's hear what people have said about those.
And I'm guessing for some people who've never come through a church door, or maybe only a christening or a wedding, church has felt a remote place, but this time has allowed them to access what church services at least are all about, and maybe seeing that they're not as formal and scary as they were years ago might mean that people will come back to church afterwards.
However, my overall feeling is that when we get back to normal, we ought to consider having an online presence of services in some way or other. I think it's reaching a lot of people. I think we're actually doing it quite well, and it would be a shame to lose that.
Now, something that's quite interesting to me is that we've got some new people joined us, but they're not necessarily living in this country even. And so when we're thinking about what church means, then we've got to think really about an online community as well as a in real life community.
I hope, and I'm sure we will, continue to go online, because there have been so many people who've been able to access services who cannot normally do so because they can't get to church for some reason and they would really like to, and that seems very important.
Basically, Leslie Crawley pointed out some time ago, we are getting more hits on these services than our total congregation in the parish.
We have been able to try to do what Jesus told his disciples to do in today's gospel. That is, proclaim the good news.
One interesting thing is, if people are more interested in prayer and spirituality, we may get new people with us on Sunday mornings. And there's a church called Willow Creek that famously on Sunday mornings made their services very, very accessible, so that people crossing the threshold could sort of enter in and understand what was going on a Sunday morning quite well. And for the kind of hardcore regulars, they had I think a Wednesday evening service. And I do wonder whether we're going to need to think more in terms of being all age every Sunday on a Sunday morning.
Accessible, that's both physically and culturally. So of course we want our churches to be physically accessible as possible. We've done good work in the past on making St Mark's and St George's both very accessible to people using wheelchairs or pushchairs. And we know that we've got some work to do at St John's to make that better. But it's not just about physical accessibility, it's also about cultural accessibility. People need to feel confident about walking into churches and feeling that they are open, warm and welcoming places for them to come and be. And a lot of this is to do with language and vocabulary fit for people who do not worship in our churches every week or every month.
Perhaps we need to think more radically about what this will do, what we will change, how things will look when we get back. And Simon has thought extensively about this, and you can watch his video, the link to the video in its entirety. But here's just a snippet.
By transforming our church with the full involvement of a wider representation of parishioners and in turn enabling the church to transform lives from either a faith and or fellowship perspective, should pave the foundations for us to be able to grow our mission, grow our community relevance, and ultimately the outcome of that is to grow our parish revenue. And the latter of those three that we have talked about and prayed on for some time recently, we need to do this for three critical reasons. One, we must meet our annual costs of our parish with confidence each year, because that is a requirement, not a request. We have to meet those costs just like we have to meet the costs of our own households. And we have to move on our conversation to more meaningful topics than just how do we get by financially. Secondly, we must be able to contribute to causes beyond the scope of our church costs if we're going to ever be deemed to be an organisation that is valued by contributing to our community and literally transforming lives. And thirdly, we want our legacy as custodians for our three parish churches to be looked back upon as a generation that made our church and our community a better place for all. That's what we want our legacy to be. So there's a big challenge ahead of us for that.
During this sermon, we've talked about a lot of possibilities. I think that's what most of them are, possibilities. I think perhaps the one that we are, all of us who've thought about this, spoken about this, in favour of, is keeping some form of online worship going for the people who can't get to church, which will include, in the short term at least, many of those who used to come. And because of that, we're just sort of thinking openly at the moment. So if you've got thoughts, please do let us know. You've probably seen this via the website, so you know our email addresses, you know our phone numbers. Please do get in touch.